Good morning, everybody. Well, talking in 5 minutes about these complex subjects is very difficult. I will do my best. I just want to introduce you to myself because it's relevant to this discussion. I've been involved in bio-waste collection and treatment now for more than 20 years and helped set up the system in Italy, which some of you have talked about. So it's a business that I know very, very well indeed. And I'm actually going to come to it from a different point of view to the rest of the speakers this morning. I agree with Alessandro. We're in a time of great transition and there's a lot of confusion out there. We forget that we are actually into the fourth industrial revolution. We may not see that industrial revolution because it's happening in cyberspace, but we are into the industrial revolution. And of course, the fourth industrial revolution, of course, that impacts those who were the beneficiaries of the first, the second, and third industrial revolutions, because the fourth industrial revolution will put a lot of them out of business. And so let's not forget that the first and second and third industrial revolution have caused some of the environmental challenges which we are living through today: climate change, pollution, loss of topsoil, and an absolutely disastrous food production and consumption system. So let's hope that the fourth and maybe the fifth industrial revolution that we will go through will sort some of those things out. So we're in a global transition, and the global transition will mean that we have to excuse me, I have a building site near here, so excuse the background noise. The global transition that will mean that food waste is a critical element, not only to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and waste management, but also to getting our soil systems worked out. And whilst composting was until recently, and Alessandro pointed that out, considered almost to be a backyard hobby and not a major industrial solution, today, the way in which we recover food waste is core to a whole series of solutions to this global transition. And we've talked about the circular economy. Well, I remind everybody of the Ellen MacArthur butterfly because we don't talk enough about the left-hand side of that butterfly, the biosphere. We talk about the technical materials, the mechanosphere, because I think all us as little boys, we played around with toys, we put them together, but we actually didn't play around in the mud, and that's because we all live in cities. So we sort of fail to understand how important that biosphere is. But that biosphere is where everything comes from: our life support systems, our health, our food, our water, our air. It will not make the slightest bit of difference to humanity whether we recycle another 1 million tons of plastic or not, but it will make a total difference to the future of humanity whether we get organic carbon back to soil. How are we doing? Well, the data presented by the colleague from the EEA were interesting because he talks about bio-waste. But we have to talk about bio-waste separating out food and garden waste. And if we look at food waste separately, we can see that only 16% of food waste across the EU is currently intercepted and treated. Okay, so roughly 85% is still sent to landfill and incineration. So there's a fantastic opportunity there for industry in the food waste section, of course, also in garden waste. And of that food waste, which is currently captured in the EU 27, 2/3 of it is captured in Italy. 2/3 of it, because we started this process off 25 years ago, is captured in Italy. And around about 100 kilos per inhabitant, which is why I asked Patrick from Munster what his interception rate is, and it's around about 54 kilos. So we have a lot to learn from Italy, and I will talk about this a minute because it's very important for the whole economic structure of the way in which we collect bio-waste. Because Italy gets a lot of that bio-waste back to soil through composting. It extracts the biogas. We make renewable energy. Alessandro has shown all that. We know all that. But above all, we are getting in Italy the example of huge amounts of organic carbon going back to soil. And to do that, we worked out in Italy many years ago that we need that organic carbon to be clean. There's no point putting back to soil materials which are polluting soils. And so the problem that Italy had and was up until a few years ago, the enormous cost of extracting plastics from food and garden waste collections. Now you have the data there. Even today, with very, very low purity, the Italians estimate that the cost to extracting plastics from AD and compost plants is around about 100 million euro a year. And this is with very, very low contamination rates of around 1.5% of plastics overall. And that is because in 2010, we introduced the law in Italy that all food waste has to be collected either with reusable containers or with compostable bags. Now, I personally wrote that law. And that law has been a game changer for Italian biowaste collection because it has enabled contamination levels to go down. It's still a problem. It's a 100 million euro a year problem. But what would it have been had we been collecting our biowaste with plastics? Well, let's do the maths. Let's look at what's happening in the rest of Europe. And even if we were to consider the rest of Europe with these low contamination levels, that's works out at about $1 billion euro a year. Now that's a disaster for the whole biowaste industry. Very good news for incineration. Good news for those who've still got residual space in landfills, but a disaster for anaerobic digestion and composting. So look out for this. If the impurity levels were not 1.5% as they are in Italy, but were roughly 5% as they are in Northern Europe, and even up to and over 15% in Spain, well, I estimate that the cost to the biowaste system of transferring plastic from biowaste to incineration could be as much as 2.5 billion euro a year. So that's a transfer of money from biowaste collections to incineration, which we do not foresee and we have not understood. So beware of this. And I specifically say this to the Environmental Agency and to public officials, and I've said this to the European Commission. You do not take this into account when you tell countries to collect their biowaste. You do not take the consequences into account, both environmentally in terms of the plastic going to soil. Here's plastics going to soil. These photographs taken by the Environment Agency in the UK. And more plastics are going to soil than going to oceans. And a lot of that is going through compost and digestate. So take this into consideration. Here is what an average European and British biowaste collection looks like. It looks like mixed waste. And the Environment Agency in the UK estimates that even with low food waste collections that we have now, roughly 100,000 tons of microplastics are going to soil. This is a collection in Catalonia. This is biowaste. You wouldn't believe it, would you? But this is a biowaste collection in Catalonia. So they have here, and I'm sorry, I've lost the text here, but roughly 22% contamination of plastic bags. We have to get these plastic bags and we have to get plastics out of food waste if you want to do your food waste properly, if you want to get that organic carbon back to soil, whether it's through digestate or whether it's through composting. But above all, if you want to treat this stuff, you can't treat plastic in a bio-waste plant. It doesn't work. And that is a huge risk which the industry is facing, and I want you to be aware of that. And we need to act now to mandate a similar law to Italy's law that we wrote 10 years ago to ensure the purity of food waste collections. There's a load of sources you can go to find that data, but you can also find it by sending me an email. I will be very happy to share all the files that I have on soil contamination of plastics. It is a growing problem, and the fact that these plastics are now getting into our food through soil is now understood by science. It's a nice little book I wrote about these issues. If you bored over the Christmas holidays, please read it. Thank you.